I think I might stand with it. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to be here. It's getting towards the end of the day, okay? So, I mean, you probably had a huge amount of information overload. So we're going to be very, very brief, keep it very, very tight. And what we want to do is just, it's been a fabulous, those who've been at the various sections on innovation, we've had some amazing stories. And one of the best things is trying to get people to say in 3 minutes, 5 years of their life, 5 years work in 3 minutes, and then they get judged on that. And it's been a real privilege to be part of that social innovation channel and so on. We're just going to do two things, okay? We're going to tell you a couple of stories about how Vodafone innovation is making the world a better place, particularly for women, because we're very focused on that. And then my colleague Amit is going to talk to you about two products that we are developing in a new space to really get a bigger scale and a bigger impact on that. For those of you who don't know how Vodafone arranges its giving, just to give you 30 seconds on the context, we've had a foundation since 1991. We give about 50 million euros direct cash every year in the 27 communities in which we operate. And for a long time, we wrote checks. Okay, but we don't feel that's the way we should do it, and we've been changing that for the last 10 years. So instead of writing a check, we're investing the same amount of money, but bringing the technology and the people skills. So there's many people in this room who I recognize who have been instrumental in building the two stories I'm going to talk about and in building the two projects that Amit's going to talk about. So two areas. Let me just give you two examples. Okay, so the first area is one of the epidemics in every market in which we operate is gender-based violence, domestic violence. Wherever you go in the world, it is a serious issue today. In Europe, 1 in 3 women suffer from domestic violence in their lifetime, according to the latest statistics. We were asked, most European markets are in the room, there's a fixed-line alarm system. The police will provide a fixed-line alarm system for the highest-risk domestic violence victims. The only issue of that is that the victim survivor becomes a prisoner of their home, and the perpetrator is at large. So we were asked, could we develop a very simple solution which would enable the victim survivor to feel as safe outside the home as inside the home? And we did that. We just froze everything on a handset. We connected a direct line to the police, so the preordination of that number is in the handset. And we produced a very simple solution whereby you hold it for 3 seconds, it opens a direct line. The police can hear everything that happens. They know where the person is. And indeed, some of the police forces now have the notes of that individual in their systems. So 100,000 women, predominantly with 96% women. It's a growing issue for men, but 96% women across Europe, 96% of the 100,000 have been using that over the last 5 years. I'll just give you an example of one story. So what sort of people are using it? You'd be absolutely amazed at some of the people who have benefited from this. Obviously, stalking is a big issue, and many people who face that challenge are using it. But I met one lady, I'll give an example because it could be any of us. A few weeks ago, she came and she talked to colleagues at Vodafone after I'd heard her story at the Metropolitan Police in London. She met a guy on a date. They got on well. They exchanged contacts. She couldn't spell his name, so he typed his contact into her phone. They had a couple of dates. She don't know when it happened, but obviously he had at the same time linked through Find My Friends his details into her phone. She couldn't work out why she kept bumping into the guy, and it ended in serious sexual assault. Because she kept seeing him, she didn't know why. She went to the police. The police said, hand over the phone. She'd never heard of Find My Friends. She'd never heard of that sort of system, okay? She's now one of our users. He's on trial. He will go to prison because it was serious sexual assault. Very simple technology, very simple application of our technology to an issue which is something that is important to Vodafone. So in the last International Women's Day, Vodafone was the first global company to announce up to 10 days paid leave for every employee in every market in which Vodafone operates, if they're experiencing some of this difficulty, to find time, legal advice, advice from NGOs, take time out, et cetera, et cetera. So one story of how our technology is making a difference. Second area, I think the company statistics say that I think it's 2010, 2011, 40 million people were constantly connected. The number now is 3.9 billion, okay? If you've got no access to the written word, you've got very limited books. You simply, have been excluded. Now, when you get connected, you get access to every piece of the written word that's ever been written. It's a revolution which is happening in our lifetime and will probably be one of the biggest revolutions in history. If you go to one of our stands, you'll see a classroom in a box that we simply developed about 5 years ago, started developing it, where we put everything that is that in the highest spec private school in anywhere in the world, the same sort of digital lesson you can take to anywhere in the world. So hardware, content, connectivity, all of that available, 25 tablets. So we're running in refugee camps because we decided there are 3 million refugees in countries in which Vodafone operates. We decided to start there. We're running connected classes for over 60,000 young people every day of the week with UNHCR. And just to give you 2 examples of the power of connectivity to transform particularly women's lives, I was in Cairo about 6 months ago, and we went about 100K to see a very simple digital literacy program that we were running there. And about 100 women all learning to read and write via smartphone. And I met this lady. She was religiously dressed, but she was happy to chat. And I said, you know, rather profoundly, why do you want to learn to read and write? And just, you know, start the conversation going. She said she wanted to read the Quran. She then said, I'd like to teach my children to read and write because I don't want them to have the disability that I've had. And then she stopped and she was checking me out. I knew that. I could see from her facial expression as whether she could trust me. So I just sat in silence. And she said, the third reason I'd like to learn to read and write is because I don't have a mobile phone. But my husband has a mobile phone, and I want to read the texts on his mobile phone. Okay? And I thought this was a basic education literacy program. But the power of connectivity was transforming this woman's life, was addressing a relationship and the balance of that relationship and everything else. And let me finish just with one story, and then I'll hand over to Amit, because we want to do much more and much bigger than what we're currently doing. Kakuma refugee camp is in northwestern Kenya. It's one of the biggest refugee camps in the world. And you hear a lot of stories about why girls' education is important. You educate a girl, you educate a village. You educate a girl, you prevent her from getting married. You prevent her from getting married. It has all sorts of health implications for her. And I was there with the chairman of Comet Relief, who's also invested in the camp, a big UK charity. And we had a presentation from one of the digital schools that I've just talked about. And as always with teenagers all over the world, you know what I mean, a few sort of strange people come into the lesson and sit there. There's a bit of embarrassment and so on and whatever. And the teacher says, has anyone got any questions for our guests? And there's absolute silence. Okay, I mean, you expect that. I've got teenagers myself. So, you know, you don't expect necessarily a deep level of engagement first off. And then this girl stood up and she said this. She said, I'd like to thank Vodafone because as a result of this technology, I don't have to get married. And then she sat down. And I could not believe what I've just heard. So I said to the teacher, ask her to say something more. And the teacher said, you know, in a language I don't understand, would you like to say something more? She said, no. Okay. So I said afterwards, can I have a chat with her? I went to have a chat with her. And I said, tell us a little bit more about what you just said. A, it's very kind of you to say it, but I'm really much more interested in knowing something about your story. And she said, well, my parents are illiterate. They can't read and write, and they want me to get married because I reached 16, and it's much better for the family. But she said the teacher came with me to the family home, this is in a refugee camp, and took the tablets on which we're learning. And although they couldn't read and write, they saw everything that I was learning, and as a result of which, I can carry on in school. And I just wanted to say thank you. So our technology is really, you know, the potential to transform life is significant. And actually, there are limitations to charity and philanthropy. You know, charity and philanthropy has its place, but if you want to do this stuff sustainably at scale, then there has to be a commercial element to it. There has to be a way of using money in the system to make it go bigger and bigger. And so we've created a space in Vodafone. We call it Vodafone Business Ventures. It's a stream of money which is in the business itself, which the foundation foregoes, and which is developing a couple of products where we believe there's a real potential to do significant good. But if we don't build a business element into that, then we won't get to the scale that we want to. And the profits from those 2 projects are going either into continuing that social product area or coming to the foundation. And I want to introduce Amit, who's delivering that for us. Amit.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. I know it's late in the day, and I don't want to come between you and your glass of gin and tonic, so I'll be very brief here. Andrew mentioned about some of the limitations of corporate philanthropy, and through the space that we are creating with Vodafone Business Ventures, we want to focus on 4 main areas. You know, one of them is financing. If you want to address a long-term problem, you need patient capital or access to patient capital. And we feel we have developed a space where we would have that patient capital to work on projects that can deliver a tangible solution. The other part is, how do we innovate? Because we need to move away from having a very programmatic approach to developing a very solution-focused approach in addressing some of the pressing problems that we see in health and in education. And we feel we have the space to address those problems. The third element that we also have is on how do we scale? Because when we see some of the programs we have run in Foundation, one of the key challenges we have faced is how do we leverage on our fantastic technology architecture? How do we leverage on the engineering and the human potential that we have within Vodafone and help that, harness it to bring an element of scale to address some of the issues that we have spoken about. And the fourth point that I want to quickly touch upon is on sustainability. We can have a fantastic program and launch it with a startup capital. But at the end of the day, if it is not sustainable, if it is not running for a period of 10 to 12 years, it does not have that desired impact. And it's probably not having the focus that we want to achieve over here. So what we have designed in our approach here is that the programs need to be sustainable and commercial in nature, so that profits that we make from these initiatives, they are recycled back into the foundation as well as into the business ventures programs. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes now to talk about two problems that we are working on, and we have developed a solution. Sorry, I'll talk about the team part also. We have developed an advisory board which brings into elements corporate philanthropy, operations, and scalability. And this will help us in ensuring that whatever we are doing has the highest level of governance and monitoring. So we have Nick Lance, who's the chairman of Vodafone Group Foundation. We have Joachim Reiter, who's our ExCo member and Group External Affairs Director. We have Andrew Dunnet, Foundation Director, as well as Gary Adey, who's our Commercial and Operations Director. So one of the solutions I want to talk about is connected living. What is connected living? It is basically a care management solution for people living in elderly care and in learning disability homes. Why are we doing this? Simple reason. We know that by 2060, almost 1/3 of the European population will be age 65 and above, causing an increase of 80% in long-term care costs. Now, this is not sustainable. So we know that there is a way in which we can use technology to enhance the quality of care that we can deliver in care homes. So what we do from a solution point of view is we have a care management platform that automates a lot of the admin tasks. We have a mobile app which can be used by care workers as well as by the residents so that it is configurable and personalized. And finally, we have a Vodafone smart home technology, which is basically leveraging on the smart home solutions that we have developed for our consumer proposition. So this essentially gives you a sense of security, a sense of automation in terms of how you run your day-to-day operations in the house, and enhances the productivity for the care workers and residents. Finally, the other solution I want to talk about is connected education. This is something that Andrew briefed a while ago. Again, why are we involved in this solution? Simple reason. We know that 250 million students, they do not go to schools. And even the ones that go to schools, they lack basic IT literacy skills. So what we have done here is designed a service which combines secure connectivity, device, learning management platform, and content, which we can offer as a one-stop solution to schools. We realize that digitalization has been having a huge impact across industries, and there is no reason why we would not see a much more digitalized environment in schools, particularly with a focus on AMAP and other emerging markets. So those are the two things that we are working on. As a key message that I want to highlight here is that education and health is a big focus area. These are themes that are very secular in nature, and we feel that we are just about scratching the surface over here. Thank you for listening.